Right, good morning everybody, good afternoon, it's Terry from Early Start here. I hope you're all keeping well. Still stuck at home, but sure, what are you going to do? So I thought I might do another story for you if you'd like to listen. Excellent, switch on your ears as we say in the Early Start, and if you don't want to, just turn it off. Turn it off. Now, this story is set a long time ago, this time in Ireland. Ireland. Now, so long ago that Ireland actually wasn't one country. Nope, it was a lot of kingdoms stuck together, or queendoms. Now, kingdoms are ruled by kings and queendoms are ruled by queens, and a lot of these kingdoms and queendoms were at war with each other. But the kingdom we're talking about wasn't. It was ruled by King Larry Lynch, and he wasn't fighting anybody else. And his kingdom was full of peace. It was a peaceful place, and therefore people were happy because there was lots of food, enough food for everybody. There was enough work for everybody. The children had schools to go to. Lucky them. And there was loads of places for people to play and to relax. So people were happy. Well, they were, except for, well, King Larry. There were two things about King Larry Lynch that I need to tell you. The first thing is that you hardly ever saw King Larry Lynch in public. That means he never or he rarely left the palace. And if he did, he would be wearing a long cloak with a hood that was cast right over his head, all the way over his head, covering his eyes, and all you might see would be the tip of his nose and the tip of his chin. Do you see? Yeah, you never saw the whole of his head or his face. And even if you went to visit him in his palace, which you weren't really allowed to, but if you were lucky, all you would see was this person sitting on a throne in a cloak with the hood cast over their head, and all you would see is the tip of their nose and chin gleaming in the candlelight. No one ever saw the whole of his head or the full of his face. So people used to wonder, what does he look like? What's wrong? What's going on? What does he look like? Well, you would, wouldn't you? You'd think all sorts of stuff going on. And the second thing I need to tell you about was, around the time of his birthday, he'd have his hair cut. Just one haircut a year. And whoever cut his hair, they'd be taken away immediately, brought to the prison, and they would be put to death. Killed. So no one wanted to cut King Larry's hair. I mean, why would you? So King Larry Lynch had to pass a law. And a law is like a rule. And the law said every year there would be a lottery. And the lottery is, well, it's kind of like a raffle. And what would happen is your name would be written on a ticket. And the ticket would put in a giant barrel in the middle of the city square. And a hand would go in and ruffle it around and pull out one ticket. And whoever's name is on that ticket there, that would be the person who will be taken to the palace to cut King Larry Lynch's hair. And therefore they would put to death. And that person's family would get 10 gold pieces. Well, that's not good to you. You're dead. Who'd want 10 gold pieces? Someone is dead in your family. Desperate. Anyhow, one year it was time for the lottery. And everybody was in the town square watching and waiting. And everybody's name, anybody who's over 16 years of age, had their name written down on one of the tickets and put into the barrel. And the hand went in from probably the general, one of the soldiers, put his hand in and pulled out and read out the person's name. And the person was a boy who was aged 16. And he was chosen to go and cut King Larry's hair. Now, as you can imagine, his mum was absolutely so upset. She could not believe her only son would be taken away from her. She couldn't believe it. And also, I forgot to tell you, that she was a widow, which meant she had no husband. It was just her and her son. And she said, what am I going to do if they take my son away from me? I have nobody to look after me when I'm older. And I love my son. Oh my God. Anyway, being a typical mammy, she said, right, she got her coat and she went straight down to the palace. And she hammered on the door. And the soldiers opened the door and said, yes, I want to see King Larry Lynch. And they said, no one can see her. But she, being a mammy, she stayed there outside the palace hammering for one day. She stayed outside hammering for the second day. And on the third day, King Larry Lynch sent a message to find out who was hammering at the palace door. And she was told it was a woman who wanted to see him. So he said, send the woman to me now. So she was brought into the palace. Yeah. And she was taken to this chamber has this big posh room. And the soldier locked on the door. Boom, boom, boom. And they heard a voice saying, enter, which means come in. And the door was open. That door needs a serious amount of oil. And the woman was told, in you go. The mammy walked in. And at the end of the chamber, way down the other side, she could see King Larry Lynch sitting on a throne. The room was dark, kind of dingy, only candlelights here and there. She could barely see him, and as she got closer and closer, she could see him sitting on his throne, with the black cloak and the hood cast over his face, over his eyes, and all she could make out was the tip of his nose and the tip of his chin gleaming in the candlelight. And King Larry Lynch said, "What do you want?" And she said, "It is me. My son was chosen to cut your hair this year." "Well, what of it?" said King Larry Lynch. And she said, "I do not wish my son to cut your hair, for I do not wish him to die." And the king said, "If your son does not cut my hair, someone else will have to do it, and that person will have to die." And she said, "I know, but if you can spare my son's life," she said, "if you let him go afterwards, I'll make sure he cuts your hair, and he does a good job, but please, please, let him go afterwards." And the king refused. And she said, "I beg you, please." And she kept begging, "He's my only son. There's nobody left in my family. Who will look after me when he's gone? I'll be old and I'll have nobody." And the king said, "You will have 10 gold pieces." And she said, "I'd rather choke on the 10 gold pieces than lose my son." Well, King Larry Lynch said, "Right." And he just said, "Right. When your son comes to cut my hair," he said, "he will learn a secret, and he must keep that secret to himself." And his wife said, "Oh yes, absolutely, I promise. Now listen to me. If he ever reveals," that means to tell, "if he ever reveals my secret to anyone, I will have him put to death, and I will also have you put to death." And she said, "No, I promise, he will never, ever say anything." "Okay." So he agreed, King Larry Lynch. Well, she was delighted. She flew home, and she told the young fellow what had happened. Now, she said, "When you go and cut King Larry's hair, you will be spared, on condition that whatever you find out, you must never, never tell anybody." "Okay, ma," he said. And she said, "Look, sit down and listen to me. Promise me, whatever you say, you'll never say it to anyone." "No problem, ma. Never will." So the next day, he was taken away by the soldiers, marched through the town, and all the people looking at him going, "Now that poor young fellow, off he goes. God love him. That poor old widow, her son is going to be gone. She'll have nobody, but what are you going to do?" And he was brought to the palace, and he was brought to the chamber door. The door was hammered on. The door opened. They still hadn't oiled it. And the son was sent in, "Go and cut King Larry's hair." He walked in, the boy, and he saw King Larry Lynch sitting down on the far side of the room on his throne, in the dark and dingy chamber, with the hood cast over his face, over his eyes, and all he could see was the tip of the nose and the tip of the chin gleaming in the candlelight. And King Larry Lynch said, "Are you the boy who was chosen to cut my hair?" "I am," said the boy, who was very nervous. "Well," said King Larry Lynch, "did your mother tell you that whatever you see today you must never reveal to anyone?" "I promise. Yes, she told me I'm not to say it to anyone." And if you do, you should be put to death, and your mother will be put to death too." I know, I promise I will tell nobody." "Okay then, step forward." And as the boy stepped forward, he could see a table beside the throne where a scissors was there. And he picked up the scissors. "Right, I'm ready." And with that, King Larry Lynch put his hand to his cloak, or his hood, I beg your pardon, and pulled back the hood. And on his head, not ears like you or mine, no, he had 2 horses' ears that popped up, boom, boom, for King Larry Lynch had horses' ears. And the boy went, but he knew not to laugh. "Oh," he said, "I won't laugh," he said to himself. And King Larry Lynch said, "Now you see, I have horses' ears. This is my secret that no one must ever know about." "Oh no, I promise I won't tell anybody." And the ears were kind of popping around like a horse, going like that. It's mad looking. And the boy said, "Okay, I'll cut your hair now." So he began to cut his hair very carefully around. You wouldn't want to cut the ears, genuinely. Cutting around King Larry's hair, and he was trying to do his best that he could. His hand was shaking a little bit. And eventually, after about 10 minutes, the king said, "Are you finished?" "Yes, I am." "Okay then." So the boys kind of swept the hair off King Larry's shoulder and swept it off the floor. And King Larry Lynch put his cloak back over his head, over his eye, and all the boy could see now was the gleam of his nose and chin and the candlelight. And King Larry Lynch said, "Go and tell nobody what you saw." But the boy barreled it home. And as he was going through the streets, people said, "Look, it's your man. How did he get away with it? What's after happening?" And people called him, "What happened? Tell us, what did you see?" But he didn't tell anybody. And when he got home, his mum was very wise. She didn't say anything, didn't ask him anything, just said, "Your dinner's ready." And he sat down and he ate his dinner. And he thought, what a day. Well, he was exhausted. So he went to bed. But he didn't sleep well that night. For that night he had very strange dreams, and all he kept dreaming about was horses' ears, yeah. And the next night he had the same dream. And the next night he had the same dream. And the next night, and the next night. And soon a strange dream turned into nightmares where he'd wake up screaming, "Ah, my God!" And he couldn't sleep anymore. He was afraid to go to bed at night because all he kept thinking about was horses' ears. And he couldn't tell anybody the secret, and it made him worry and worry. And because he was so worried, he stopped eating, and he wasn't eating his food, and he couldn't sleep, and he couldn't drink water, he couldn't go to school. He was just so upset and worried, and eventually he was so bad that he just stayed in bed all day. And he got sicker and sicker with worry and stress. So his ma said, "I have to do something." So she went to see the wise woman. Now the wise woman in the village was just like a doctor. She knew what to do if you had a sore elbow, if you broke your leg, or if you had some sort of sickness or illness. She could help you. Or if you were worried or stressed, she could sort you out. So she went to see the wise woman. And the wise woman listened to the story and said, "Yes, he will have to share his secret." And I said, "He can't share his secret. If he shares his secret, everyone will know. He will be put to death, and I will be put to death." The wise woman said, "No, you're not listening to me. I didn't say he must share his secret with a person. He must share his secret with the willow tree." "What?" said the woman. "The willow tree." "Where is this willow tree?" "You must leave the city. Go to the river. Follow the river until he comes to a forest. He must go into the forest, and in the forest he must find the lake. He must cross the bridge over that lake, and on the lake there is an island. And in the island he must walk until he finds the willow tree where 7 branches are hanging into the water. And on that willow tree," said the wise woman, "there is a little hole in the tree, and he must put his voice out to the hole in the tree, and with his voice he can tell the secret through the tree." Sounded very strange to the woman, but she said, "I'll try anything." So she went home and told her son, "This is what you must do." And his son was very weak, and she couldn't go with him because she might hear the secret. He'd have to go on his own. So he struggled. He struggled out of the city. He followed the river. Until he came to the forest. And he walked through the forest where he found the lake. And in the lake he could see the island, and he crossed over to the island. And on the island he searched and searched and searched, and he found the willow tree with the 7 branches hanging into the water. And there he could see it. The hole in the willow tree. Maybe a bird made it. I don't know. And he went up to the hole in the tree, and he put his mouth gently to the bark of the tree and said, "King Larry Lynch has horse's ears." And just like that, he felt the weight rise from his shoulders. And he sighed, "Oh," and he felt better. He could not believe it. Oh my God, he felt better. And he walked home. And when he got home, his mum said, "Well, yes, Mum, I feel better." Because he had shared the secret, he'd shared his worry. Now, the little boy did not know this. The man did not know this. But the wise woman did not know this either. That exact time, in that forest, the king's harpist. A harpist is a musician, and he plays a harp. It's kind of like a violin, but it's on the side, it's got strings, and you play it like the aim sound, ring, ring. Oh, it's not a bit like a violin actually, but yeah, a harpist. And he was the king's harpist, and his harp had broken. And because King Larry's birthday was coming up, he needed to build himself a new harp to have it ready for the party, so he could sing a song for King Larry, you see. And he needed to find a special piece of wood, and he'd been searching and searching and searching the forest. And then he came to the tree, the willow tree, with the 7 branches hanging over the water. And one of the branches he noticed was loose. And he thought, "Oh, I'll take that." So very carefully, he took out his axe, and he gently chipped away at the branch. It was falling down anyway. And he took it down, he looked at it and said, "This branch, yeah, I can make myself a harp out of this branch." And he brought the branch back to the palace where his musician's room was, and he, with his tools, he turned the branch into a beautiful harp, and he stringed it up with lovely strings, and he was going to play this. He said, "I won't play it now. No, this is my new harp, and I will only play it for King Larry." So he thought about the song he was going to sing. The next day, it was King Larry's birthday, and the palace was full of people celebrating. Full of people, packed, jammers. And King Larry was there in his chamber, and his chamber was full of people, and they lit up the room. It looked quite nice actually now, all decorated. There were hundreds of people there celebrating King Larry Lynch's birthday. But not King Larry. He still sat on his throne at the back with his black cloak, with his hood cast over his head. And all you could see was the tip of his nose and the tip of his chin. And he stood there and he gripping his chair. And the party went on and on and on. And King Larry was getting tired. And he said, I wish this party was over, he thought to himself. And then the king's musician, the harpist I told you about, stood up and said, King Larry Lynch, may I play you a song on my new harp? And he took out the harp he had, the one he made out of the branch of the willow tree that had the strings on it. And King Larry Lynch said, yes, you may play a song for me. Thank you, said the harpist. Thank you so much. And with that he stood up and said, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to sing a song for King Larry here. I am going to sing a song that I have written especially for his birthday, and I am going to use my new harp, the harp that has never been played before. I will play it for the first time for our king. And everybody clapped and cheered. Yeah, lovely, lovely, lovely. So he got his fingers ready and he held his harp in his hand. Now, just as he's about to strike the harp, I just want to tell you that if he struck a harp, it would make a nice ring sound, right? So he said, now, 1, 2, 3. So he put his hand onto the strings, waiting to hear the lovely bring sound, and he pulled his hand along the strings, but no bring came out, only a voice. And as he put his hand on the strings and he pulled across the strings, they heard this voice saying, King Larry Lynch has horse's ears. Everyone stopped dead. The musician said, what? So he tried again, and he put his fingers on the harp and pulled his fingers across the strings, but it didn't go bring. The voice came out again. King Larry Lynch has horse's ears. And people were shocked. And then people started to laugh. What? And the harpist said, what? And he tried again. Bring, but not bring. It said, King Larry Lynch has horse's ears, louder and louder. And people started laughing because the sentence was echoing around the hall. King Larry Lynch has horse's ears. King Larry Lynch has horse's ears. And people look, what does it mean, King Larry Lynch has horse's ears? What are we talking about? King Larry Lynch has horse's ears. What does that mean? And the harpist said, oh God, I'm in trouble here now. And King Larry, you could see his hand gripping the sides of his throne. He was so angry, his knuckles were white with anger. And then they relaxed. And everybody stopped and looked at him. And King Larry Lynch just stood up. And his shoulders went down a bit. And he put his 2 hands to his hood and threw back his hood. And there they were. Up sprang the horse's ears. And people looked and they started to laugh again. And then they went, well, it's not too bad really. And King Larry Lynch threw his head back and laughed as well. And he said, I am so sorry, he said to everybody. I was so ashamed of my horse's ears, but what difference does it make, really? And people laughed and agreed. And after a while, nobody noticed that King Larry had horse's ears. They just remembered that he was a king who looked after his people, and his kingdom was peaceful and happy. And with that, the whole thing changed. That no longer did King Larry appear in secret. He would appear out open now, and everyone could see his horse's ears, and people were delighted, and people were happy. And the widow and her son, they lived happily ever after, for they were safe and sound. And King Larry Lynch went on for years and years to rule his kingdom, and everybody actually loved his horse's ears. Now, so there you go. So that's the end of that story. Slightly more happier than the other one, maybe, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. So I suppose what that story is, if you're actually worried about something, if you're really worried, something's really getting on your nerve and on your mind, something on your mind, people say, when you're thinking about something, you have something on your mind. If you have something on your mind that gives you, kind of makes your shoulders all tense or your tummy a bit tense, it's always somebody. Share your problems with somebody, okay? So if you're feeling a bit fed up at the minute, because we're all locked out of school at the minute, go and talk to somebody, go and play, do your breathing, or do a bit of art, or go and talk to somebody, get on the phone maybe to one of your friends or something, okay? So just everybody try and relax, because all of this is going to be over soon, alright? And we'll all be back together in the early starts. Well, you won't be in the early start, we'll be in the early start, you'll be in your own room, and you'll be all about with your friends again, alright? So look after yourselves, okay? And everybody stay safe and mind yourselves, alright? And I might come back again with another story another time, okay? Okay, see you then, bye.